But that is totally irrelevant for a Korean middle-class family. They think that you're totally crazy, stupid, or autistic, or anything, because that is not in order.
Hey everyone, Gordon here. Thanks for coming to the Get Stuff Done podcast. If you're with us for the first time, a very, very warm welcome. If you're a regular listener, thank you so much for coming back again. You found your way to one of our GSD Insights episodes. In this series, which we release every other week alongside the Get Stuff Done episodes, we take a deep dive into the area of expertise of our guest. They shared their perspectives on a current or future trend, and we really hope that it's thought-provoking for you. So let's jump right in. I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Get Stuff Done podcast. I'm your host, Gordon, and today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Erik Brunnegard. He is the Senior Business Segment Manager of Digital Solutions at Roche Diagnostics. And Erik is somebody who I wanted to bring onto the podcast as a guest because he is somebody who is incredibly international in both his background and experience. He was originally born in South Korea and was adopted to Sweden at the age of 1, being part of the world's first Korean adoptee movement into Sweden during the 80s. He speaks, I think, 5 languages, which we can get into in a little while. Across his career of more than 20 years, spanning business development, sales, marketing, but mostly in the area of IT solutions. He has a very interesting perspective on cross-cultural management, which I think will be maybe the focus of what we talk about today. But first of all, Erik, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you very much. I love to be here.
And so then in terms of your identity, and you are a dual passport holder, both Swedish and Korean.
Yes.
And how then do you navigate the Korean society with your Swedish brain, but Korean face?
Exactly. That is a very good question with a very complex answer. When I was younger, my personal ambition was that I should be very Korean. I should adapt totally, 200%, both in language and in behavior and in everything. But I very soon realized during the years, especially when I was living in Korea, that it's almost impossible. You can never be a Korean like the Koreans because you don't share the same child memories. You don't have the same memories or associations of, for example, TV dramas, and you cannot describe the food of the 70s in Korea the same way. So being at my age right now, I'm fully content and happy being a Korean with a Swedish background in Korea. And I am also very much aware that even if I speak Korean, the values that I sometimes are communicating are very, very un-Korean. So even if I speak Korean, they almost immediately understands that he is from abroad. When we are discussing, for example, what's the meaning of life, what is a good job, what should you do during your free time, speaking with especially older Koreans, my Swedish values and their Korean values are like minus and plus. It's very, very different, I can promise you. When, for example, I have returned home, maybe in the early afternoon, from school or from a company meeting, people think that I am in trouble. Why are you not joining a drinking party? Why are you not joining a dinner? You don't have the connections sufficiently that you need. What can we do to help you? You're really in big danger. So being a Swede doing that is perfectly in order. Because if you return early in the afternoon, you have time for kids or from your family, or you can make the dinner, or you can make the grocery shopping. But that is totally irrelevant for a Korean middle-class family. They think that you're totally crazy, stupid, or autistic, or anything, because that is not in order. You should be networking, drinking coffee with your mates, workmates, or your boss. You should go for a dinner that usually ends very late. And you should go on not only drinking parties, but also join a sauna in the middle of the night before you're returning home.
Yes, I remember one of my former colleagues who was Russian, and she just enjoyed to have lunch by herself. She just found that we were quite we had a lot of meetings as a team. So there was the work we were doing was almost always collaborative. And so she really needed lunchtime to just have some alone time. The first sign that I got, this had been noticed, if I can put it like that, was a Korean manager came to me and said, what's wrong with her? Is she okay? And I was curious. I couldn't quite understand what asking that. And he mentioned about always taking lunch by herself and not joining the team lunches. And so, I would just, let him know that it's purely just because she feels she needs that, but that still doesn't satisfy, the typical Korean office culture, because that desire to do that still doesn't matter. We should still go with the team for lunch together, and we're going to eat what the team leader has chosen that we're going to eat today, even if we don't like it, or even if we had it yesterday. That doesn't matter. But the good thing is that this is changing from what I can see. And I think definitely younger generations are not being so deferent without question. I think, of course, the same cultural nuances exist, absolutely, in terms of politeness and the way of communicating seniority. But in terms of an appreciation of individuality has been on the rise and is ever more demanded by younger generations and candidates. That was something that I would always hear from candidates when talking to them about a new position, when recruiting on behalf of a company, was about now their work from home policy, and that the flexibility, that it's not a mandatory 8 till 6 in the office 5 days a week. That there is some flexibility there. So I hope that continues to flourish, because here in the UK, if you don't give those options, then you're not hiring anybody.
No. And for example, in Sweden, it's very important to take childcare leave, both as a woman and then as a man. And a couple usually do a sharing between you usually get up to 9 months, I think, to actually decide for yourself when you can use it. And I think that is really, really good to actually create your own life and create your own lifestyle. I definitely think that this is important for all, and I also fully agree with you. It's a big change between the younger generation being in the 20s or early 30s in Korea than the older ones, and that's good.
And as a Korean-born person who spent, am I correct, this is the majority of your life outside of Korea, right? The majority, right?
Yes, right.
How now do you feel about the rise of the Korean soft power and that Korea is more on the map than ever before? What's your personal feeling about?
I think it's actually both amusing and funny, but I can also very often think how people outside Korea can misinterpret how Korea really is. I can give you an example. When I lived in southern part of Sweden, I arranged language courses through an organization. So I offered Korean language courses for elementary levels, beginners levels. And I did that for myself for 1.5 years. I was an evening teacher. And I was expecting that some adoptees were going to join. I was expecting that people of Korean origin were going to join, but I only got blonde teenage girls that only have listened to Big Bang and to the different Korean pop groups and were planning to either visit Korea very quickly or immigrate or to find a Korean spouse. It was so interesting to see that they were all blonde and they were all white, so to say. They have never been in Korea or they have been on vacation. And their picture and image of Korea was that it was a very allowing country, a very great liberal country where you can be yourself and to that appreciates different styles. And to me, that was totally opposite of the collectively run country that I think Korea is because of its Confucianism, for example. So I think what I'm trying to say is I think the Hallyu and the pop culture wave that we see sometimes have created a distorted image of Korea in some ways because it's extremely focusing on the individual expression. Look at the Korean boy bands, for example. They have blue and pink hair, etc., and they can wear whatever they want, etc. But if you visit a Korean company and go to the open office, I can promise you never see a Korean manager with blue hair, for example. They almost always wear the same suits. Almost always the same nuances of blue or the same black suits, etc. I think the level of conformity in Korea when it comes to styles in clothing is very, very, it's very visible.
Yeah, it's very evident, and it's clear also, there's no doubt it's human nature that the kind of visible characteristics that you display over time will become part of you.
Yes.
I think you said you go to a Korean office and you'll see that. You just have to go on the in Seoul to see that level of conformity, or the street where you see the color of cars is only white, grey, silver, black.
Yeah.
Yes. For I don't know what incredibly high percentage of cars it is, and so that I guess that is where the idea of relative differences is so strong. We talked about it in the relative differences of European cultures, and you talk about how relatively that Korea has changed in recent years, but it is a big change relative to the incredibly small base that it's starting from, and so it can be viewed as a big change because it's from nothing to something, but in reality the level of that variety or that differentiation is still very small, which I think continues to be the challenge for, like I mentioned, the global employees, the employees of global companies in Korea, and perhaps also why we still haven't seen a Korean company that's had a lot of global success outside of traditional product-based manufacturing type of categories. So I think Amori Pacific is one exception within cosmetics, but again that is specific kind of, again, Korean soft power which has through that skincare which has come up, and beyond that, which again comes back to my question maybe of the national culture be producing the kinds of companies that a country is relatively successful in.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. I just wanted to remind you to click subscribe if you haven't done so yet. By subscribing and following the podcast, you'll get each and every episode automatically pop up on your playlist every week, so you won't miss any. Thank you so much for being with us. Now let's get back to our guest.
So Swedish and English and Korean are your main languages.
Yes.
What would be your next strongest language?
I think that would be actually Danish, because I worked in Denmark for 4 years as a regional manager. Danish is, of course, connected and related to Swedish, but the pronunciation is very different, and they difference a lot in grammar, etc. So I think Danish actually gave a different touch on how you communicate with people. I really enjoyed working in Denmark. I mentioned the culture differences earlier to you, and I think that to actually master Danish and to really understand what they were saying, it almost took a year for me to really understand what they were saying at meetings. That was really rewardable in so many ways.
Yeah, I've also personally found, as I've learned languages, of course, you gain a deeper insight into the culture, why things are the way they are in that sense. And when you're learning a language from a culture which is very different to your own, then you gain even more from getting that. It's interesting now being based in London, and then you see teams within companies, and it might be 5 people, 5 nationalities, and so there's a melting pot of cultures there, but at the same time everybody is coming to a kind of comfortable middle.
Yes.
Right, there is a kind of, everybody is accommodating in their own perhaps relatively different cultures to be able to find a common ground. And then that common ground becomes, maybe we call that global business culture, whatever that might be. But yeah, you definitely can see that happening here in London with the diversity that exists here. Have you also experienced that in your career from a particular group that is incredibly diverse in its origins?
Mm-hmm. Yes, when I relocated to Basel in Switzerland, which is the Roche headquarters. Basel is not the biggest city of Switzerland, but it's actually the city with the highest number of expats. It's a very high percentage of the Basel population is actually and that creates a very interesting environment with people. Many people are single. Many people are very new to the environment. They are seeking for company and social occasions and meetings. It was very easy for me, at least, to actually meet people in Basel because you could on Monday you met person from Spain. Tuesday you could meet 2 from Scotland, and on Wednesday you met your Swedish friends. And I think that was extremely rewarding. I never been in a city that consists of so many expats. That was a very new situation for me, and that was quite fun actually. There is an organization, international one, called Internations, and their local meetings in Basel were like big parties. A lot of people and very much networking people that wanted to connect, etc. It was very easy to make contact with people. That was fun.
Yeah, I think Internations does exist around the world, and I think I might have been to an Internations event in Seoul, if I'm not wrong, which was exactly like you mentioned, a very international group. And I think for people that are finding themselves working overseas, those kinds of groups and organizations can be the easy place to meet people, network with others who are coming or in a similar situation. For me, I was very much in Seoul in an international business community. Now I'm part of the international business community of London, but I am British in that community. So I'm part of the local. So it's interesting kind of doing that differently now, because I do think when you're a foreigner abroad, you do approach things differently compared to how you do things in your home country, no doubt about it. So is there any time when you have mistakenly committed a kind of cultural faux pas, something that you, with hindsight, or maybe at the time, in fact, was a bit of a mistake culturally?
Yeah, I think when I was new to Switzerland, I could not understand, for example, why people always talked about their watches. I thought that the thing with watches, that was only some prejudice, etc. To not
a kind of stereotype.
But really meeting Swiss people, to not give compliments to a person's watch at a social gathering is a great insult. So people meeting you, they actually looked at your watch very much, and they actually commented, "Oh, that was a nice Breitling," or that was a different version of a Rolex that I never seen before. I even joined a dinner with a group of guys sitting and drinking wine afterwards, and they talk about their watches for hours. And for me, not mentioning either my watch or what type of watch I liked was sort of, people thought it was kind of peculiar from my side.
Very peculiar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd never heard that myself. I've been to Switzerland. I haven't stayed for a particularly long time there. And so these are the things that you don't get from just short visits as a tourist and whatnot, that you really have that extended period of time is where you learn these kind of things. I remember when I was living in New York, in America, and as a Brit, the thing that I was often confronted with is how we talk about money. So early on, to somebody that I've just met, we talk openly and very frankly about money, about how much our company has made and how much we make, and et cetera, and that was something that also had kind of heard, but thought also it was maybe a stereotype. But it's just as much as the Brits like to talk about the weather. It's probably the thing, in a similar way from American chit chat. So there are all these kind of things. And I met somebody earlier this week, and we were talking about different places we traveled, and she said, "Oh, it seems you've been to a lot of countries. You've traveled a lot." But to me, I'm always thinking how there's so much of the world I haven't been to yet, and I still really need to explore more, and all these places on my list of places to go to. But you have your experiences. You either change and do the things you want to do, or but sometimes being reminded of kind of where you're at, or that relative. Sometimes we lose track of that relative yardstick when we're in certain environments. If I'm in a place where everybody has visited 50 countries, and I've only visited 40, well, I'm not very well traveled. So it's all about who you kind of surround yourself with. And so for you, what does that look like when it comes to Korean communities in Sweden?
Yeah, I think in comparison with UK and Germany, for example, I don't think that you can find so many Korean expats. I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think Germany is top in Europe, holding the largest numbers of Korean expats in Europe. The Korean diaspora in Sweden is very, it's very diverse, and I think there are in total around 3,000, including both guest students or visiting professors, etc.
Okay.
So I don't think that it's a very high number, and also the big difference between, for example, Germany and UK is that in Sweden you don't have the same number of generations that have resided in Sweden as you have in those countries. So I think you can find third and fourth generation in Germany easily, but not in Sweden. That is not so common. I think the immigration started to Sweden from the 60s and onwards because of education. I think the immigration history of Korea to, for example, Germany started much earlier and in a much different way. I'm thinking, for example, about the famous nurses that were sent by the late Korean president to Germany in order to serve. And it was actually part of a sort of loan agreement for Korea to actually send nurses to Germany. So I think the immigration history is more mature in the larger European countries than in Sweden. Still, Sweden hosts the largest number of Korean immigrants in comparison to other Nordic countries, and as such, we can actually also mention the Korean Culture Center that has been opened in Stockholm that is available for all Nordic countries, but it's physically established in Stockholm. I think that is also, again, a sign of how Koreans view Stockholm. And now we also have the Nobel Prize winner in literature that also has been in the center as well. Speaking about the Nobel Prize in literature.
Yes. Yeah, and a friend of mine has soon to release a book. She's Korean Danish, and her book that will be coming out next month is initially will only be in Danish, but it is specifically about navigating the Korean business culture from the Danish perspective. And so it'll be interesting to, when an English version comes out of that, to see that. And maybe there's a book in you, and maybe there's a book in me, on sure, this topic in the future. Who knows?
I hope so.
Well, they say that there's a book in everyone, at least one.
Yeah. Yes. Your memoirs, maybe the memoirs you can always write after a long life. Well,
there was a book that many people, as I told them about some of my experiences of my earlier years when I was working, not my own business, but for a company, and people often said, "You've got to write a book about this." And I said, "Look, if I write this book, I'll never be able to set foot in Korea again." So yes, it all depends. On that note, Erik, we have got to draw this episode to a close. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been a really good discussion. And if any of the listeners would like to get in touch with you or reach out, what would be the best way for them to do so?
They can connect via Instagram. They can also connect via LinkedIn. So
great.
I'm present on both those social platforms. So.
Perfect. Well, we will be sure to link those in the show notes. But once again, Erik, thank you so much for being with us today.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. This has been another great episode. And remember, let's get stuff done.
And that's another episode of the Get Stuff Done podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like to get involved and you have someone who you think would be a good guest for the podcast, please drop me a message and I'll be happy to get in touch. Alternatively, if you would like to share this episode on your social media, that would also be extremely appreciated by us. Thank you so much once again. Remember, let's get stuff done.